The silent waves. Nature's whispers, a warrior's call. Introduction. Jack Hastings stood on the deck of his small fishing boat, the Silent Waves, as the first light of dawn crept over Lake Michigan. The lake mirrored the pale pinks and golds of the early morning sky. Jack, a retired World War II veteran, had found solace in these waters. The rhythm of the waves and the solitude of the lake provided a stark contrast to the chaos he had once known. Jack was a man of few words, his face weathered and lined from years spent under the sun. His life had become a series of routines, each day beginning with the same ritual: preparing his boat, checking his nets, and casting off into the serene expanse of the lake. The Silent Waves was more than just a boat, it was his sanctuary, a place where he could lose himself in the simplicity of fishing and the quiet beauty of nature. As he navigated the waters, Jack's thoughts drifted to Mary and Tom. Mary, the owner of the local diner, had a kindness that belied her tough exterior. She had become a close friend over the years, their bond formed over countless cups of coffee and shared silences. Tom, a young fisherman eager to learn, looked up to Jack as a mentor. Their companionship was a subtle but steady presence in Jack's solitary life. Today, however, something felt different. Jack had noticed a decline in his catches over the past few weeks. The fish were becoming scarcer, and the once bountiful lake seemed quieter, emptier. He frowned as he hauled in his nets, finding them lighter than usual. A sense of unease settled over him, a feeling that something was wrong beneath the surface. He glanced toward the horizon, where the lake met the sky in a seamless blend of blue. There was a mystery here, something that tugged at his mind and stirred a sense of duty within him. Jack knew the lake like the back of his hand, and the changes he was seeing were a silent call to action. Jack set his jaw, determination hardening his features. He had faced many battles in his life, and this was another one he couldn't ignore. With a final look at the tranquil waters around him, he steered the Silent Waves back toward shore, ready to uncover the truth behind the lake's silence. The morning sun rose higher, casting a warm glow over Grand Haven. Jack's heart was heavy with the knowledge that his beloved lake was in trouble. But he was not a man to turn away from a fight. The Silent Waves whispered secrets, and Jack Hastings was determined to listen. Chapter 1, The Shores of Grand Haven. The sun climbed higher in the sky as Jack Hastings brought the Silent Waves into the dock. The town of Grand Haven was beginning to stir, fishermen were readying their boats, and shopkeepers were opening their doors. The smell of fresh coffee and baked goods wafted through the air, mingling with the crisp scent of the lake. Jack tied off his boat and made his way to the local diner. The bell above the door chimed as he entered, and Mary looked up from behind the counter, her face breaking into a warm smile. "Morning, Jack," she said, pouring him a cup of coffee as he settled onto a stool. "How's the lake today?" Jack took a sip, savoring the warmth. "Quiet. Too quiet. The fish aren't biting like they used to." Mary's brow furrowed. "I've heard the same from a few others. Maybe it's just a slow season." "Maybe," Jack replied, though he wasn't convinced. He glanced around the diner, noting the familiar faces of the townsfolk. They greeted him with nods and smiles, small gestures that spoke of a tight-knit community. Tom entered the diner, his youthful energy a sharp contrast to Jack's steady demeanor. "Hey, Jack," he called, sliding into the seat beside him. "Any luck today?" "Not much," Jack said. "Something's off with the lake." Tom's enthusiasm dimmed. "I've noticed it too. We should look into it." Jack nodded. "We will. But first, let's have some breakfast." They ate in companionable silence, the comfort of routine wrapping around them like a well-worn coat. After breakfast, they headed to the docks together, the early morning sun casting long shadows on the weathered wood. As they prepared their boats for another day on the lake, Jack couldn't shake the feeling of unease. He watched Tom expertly handle the nets, his eagerness a reminder of Jack's own younger days. The lake had been their livelihood, a source of sustenance and peace. But now, it felt like something was slipping away. The townsfolk went about their business, but Jack noticed the small signs of worry etched on their faces. The fish population decline was more than just a fisherman's problem, it affected everyone in Grand Haven. The local economy, the community's way of life, all tied to the health of the lake. By mid-morning, Jack and Tom were out on the water again. Jack's mind wandered back to his days in the war, the sense of duty and the need to protect something greater than himself. He felt that same pull now, the urge to uncover the truth and safeguard his home. As the sun reached its peak, they pulled in their nets, and once again, they were disappointingly light. Jack's frown deepened. "We need to find out what's happening," he said, more to himself than to Tom. Tom nodded. "Maybe we should start by talking to some of the older fishermen. They might know if something like this has happened before." "Good idea," Jack agreed. "Let's head back and see what we can find out." Back on shore, they sought out the town's seasoned fishermen, men who had spent their lives on the lake and knew its every mood. They found old Joe sitting by the docks, mending a net with hands as weathered as Jack's own. "Joe," Jack greeted him. "We've noticed a decline in the fish. Have you seen anything like this before?" Joe looked up, his eyes sharp despite his age. I've seen it. Not often, but it happens. Could be the water's changing, could be something else." "What do you mean, something else?" Tom asked. Joe shrugged. "Could be anything. Pollution, overfishing, changes in the currents. But there's been talk of something more sinister. Folks say there's been some illegal dumping in the lake. I don't know if it's true, but it wouldn't surprise me." Jack's jaw tightened. The thought of someone harming the lake, his lake, filled him with a quiet rage. "We'll look into it," he said, determination in his voice. As they walked away, Tom looked up at Jack. "What do we do now?" Jack took a deep breath, the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. "We start asking questions. We find out who's behind this. And we stop them." The day stretched on, filled with conversations and quiet resolve. Jack's sense of duty had been awakened, and he knew he wouldn't rest until the mystery was solved. The lake had given him peace and purpose, and now it was his turn to protect it. As evening fell, Jack stood at the edge of the dock, looking out over the water. The lake was a deep, endless blue, and the setting sun cast a golden path across its surface. Jack felt a sense of calm settle over him, mingled with a renewed determination. The silent waves whispered their secrets, and Jack Hastings was ready to listen. Chapter 2, Journey to Duluth. The wind whipped through Jack's hair as the silent waves cut through the waters of Lake Michigan. His mind was set on the information Joe had given him about illegal dumping. There had to be a connection to the decline in fish population. But what really intrigued him was the mention of similar issues in Duluth, Minnesota, on the shores of Lake Superior. The thought of a wider environmental problem gnawed at him, demanding action. Jack spent the next few days researching and preparing. He gathered maps, navigational tools, and stocked up on supplies. His conversations with the townsfolk had confirmed his suspicions. The lake was changing, and not for the better. The evidence pointed north, and Jack knew he had to follow it. Tom stood on the dock, watching as Jack loaded his boat. "You sure about this, Jack? It's a long way to Duluth." Jack nodded. "I have to know what's happening. If the same thing is happening there, it could give us answers." "Take care of yourself," Tom said, his concern evident. "I will," Jack replied, clapping a hand on Tom's shoulder. "Keep an eye on things here." With everything in place, Jack set off. He navigated through the Sioux Locks, passing from Lake Michigan to Lake Superior, and then onward to Duluth, Minnesota. The journey was long and arduous, but Jack was driven by a sense of duty and determination. Days turned into weeks as he traveled, relying on his experience and instincts. The solitude of the journey gave him time to reflect on his past, the war, and the peace he had found in fishing. But now, that peace was under threat, and Jack felt a responsibility to protect it. Upon reaching Duluth, Jack docked the silent waves and began his investigation. The landscape changed dramatically, with the rugged terrain of northern Minnesota replacing the gentle waves of Lake Michigan. Jack marveled at the stark beauty of the region, but he also felt a growing sense of unease. This was a harsh, unforgiving place, and he was far from home. On his third day in Duluth, Jack spotted a small research vessel. He approached cautiously, signaling his intention to dock. A woman emerged from the cabin, bundled against the cold. She watched him with a mix of curiosity and caution. "Hello," Jack called as he secured his boat. "I'm Jack Hastings. I'm here to investigate reports of environmental issues similar to what we are experiencing in Michigan." The woman nodded, her expression softening slightly. "I'm Olga Petrovna, a marine biologist. We've been studying the changes here for months. What brings you all this way?" Jack explained the situation back home, the decline in fish population, and the suspicions of illegal dumping. Olga listened intently, her eyes narrowing in thought. "You're not the first to come here looking for answers," she said. "There have been others, but many leave without finding what they seek. The Great Lakes are vast and their secrets well guarded." "I need to try," Jack said, his resolve firm. "Can you help me?" Olga hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "I can share what we've discovered. There are powerful interests at play here, and they won't take kindly to outsiders meddling in their affairs." Over the next few days, Olga and Jack worked together, sharing information and exploring the waters of Lake Superior. Olga introduced Jack to the complexities of marine biology and the delicate balance of the ecosystem. She spoke of Victor, a corrupt businessman operating in the region, whose activities they suspected were behind the environmental degradation. "Victor's operations are shrouded in secrecy," Olga explained. "He has powerful connections and a ruthless reputation. If he's involved in the dumping, we'll need solid evidence to expose him." Jack listened, his resolve hardening. He had faced tough enemies before, and he wasn't about to back down now. Together, they planned their next move, deciding to investigate one of Victor's known locations. As they approached the area, tension mounted. Jack's senses were on high alert, the familiar feeling of a mission taking over. They navigated through the cold waters, avoiding patrols and keeping a low profile. The landscape was eerily silent, the only sound the creaking of the boat and the distant roar of the lake. Their investigation led them to a remote inlet, where they observed large containers being offloaded from ships. The evidence was clear: illegal dumping was taking place, polluting the waters and threatening the marine life. Jack and Olga documented everything, taking photos and samples to bring back to the authorities. But their presence hadn't gone unnoticed. As they prepared to leave, they spotted a group of men approaching. Jack recognized the danger immediately. "We need to get out of here, now." Olga nodded, and they quickly made their way back to the boat. The men gave chase, but Jack's experience and Olga's knowledge of the area gave them an edge. They navigated through the narrow passages, evading their pursuers and making their way back to safer waters. As they sailed back, Jack felt a mix of relief and determination. They had the evidence, but the hardest part was yet to come. They needed to bring this information to the authorities and ensure that Victor's activities were stopped. The journey back to Grand Haven would be long, but Jack was ready. The silent waves had given him a mission, and he was determined to see it through. The fight to protect the waters had only just begun. Chapter 3: New Allies and Old Enemies. The journey back to Grand Haven was fraught with challenges. Jack and Olga faced rough seas, mechanical issues with their boats, and the constant fear of being tracked by Victor's men. But they pressed on, driven by their mission to expose the environmental atrocities. Upon returning to the relative safety of Lake Michigan, Jack and Olga docked their boats and headed into town. They knew they needed a safe place to analyze their findings and strategize their next steps. Mary's Diner, always a haven for Jack, now served as their temporary headquarters. Inside the warm, bustling diner, Mary greeted Jack with a hug. "Good to see you back, Jack. Who's your friend?" "This is Olga Petrovna," Jack introduced. "She's a marine biologist from Russia. We've uncovered some disturbing evidence about the decline in our fish population." Mary nodded, her expression serious. "Let's talk in the back room." Seated around a small table in the dimly lit room, Olga spread out their evidence, photographs, samples, and documents. "This is what we've found," she said, pointing to a map of the areas affected by Victor's operations. "The illegal dumping is contaminating the waters, affecting marine life, and it's likely spreading to other regions, including here." Jack's eyes narrowed as he examined the evidence. "We need to get this to the authorities. But Victor's got powerful connections. We have to be careful." As they planned their next move, Tom burst into the room, his face flushed with urgency. "Jack, there's something you need to know. Victor's men are here in Grand Haven. They're looking for you." Jack's heart pounded. "We need to move fast. We can't let them get to us before we get this information out." Olga nodded. "We should contact environmental agencies and the media. They can help spread the word and put pressure on Victor." Over the next few days, Jack, Olga, and Tom worked tirelessly, contacting various agencies and news outlets. They knew time was against them, and Victor's men were closing in. Despite the mounting pressure, they managed to secure meetings with key officials and journalists willing to listen to their story. During one of their meetings with an environmental agency representative, Jack noticed a familiar face in the crowd, Victor. The former Soviet naval officer's presence sent a chill down Jack's spine. Victor's cold, calculating gaze locked onto Jack, and a sinister smile played on his lips. After the meeting, Victor approached Jack and Olga. "You're meddling in things you don't understand," he said, his voice low and menacing. "You should have stayed in your little fishing boat, old man." Jack's jaw tightened. "We're not afraid of you, Victor. The world will know what you've done." Victor's smile widened. "We'll see about that. You've made powerful enemies, Jack Hastings. Watch your back." The confrontation only fueled Jack's determination. They continued to gather support and spread their findings, but Victor's threats loomed over them like a dark cloud. One evening, as Jack and Olga were reviewing their evidence in Mary's diner, they heard a commotion outside. Tom rushed in, out of breath. "Jack, Olga, it's Victor's men. They're trying to intimidate the townsfolk." Jack stood up, his face set with resolve. "We need to confront them. We can't let them terrorize our community." Together, they stepped outside to face Victor's men. The tension was palpable as the two groups squared off in the street. The townsfolk watched from a distance, their fear and uncertainty evident. Victor's right-hand man, a burly figure named Boris, stepped forward. "Leave now, and we'll let you walk away. Keep pushing, and things will get ugly." Jack stood his ground. "We're not going anywhere. This is our home, and we're not backing down." Boris sneered. "You're a fool, Hastings. This isn't over." As the men retreated, Jack turned to the townsfolk. "We need to stand together. If we let them scare us, they win. We have to protect our home." The community's response was overwhelming. People rallied behind Jack and Olga, determined to fight for their lake and their way of life. The support gave Jack hope, but he knew the battle was far from over. That night, as Jack sat by the lake, the weight of the responsibility pressed heavily on him. Olga joined him, her presence a comforting reminder that he wasn't alone in this fight. "We'll get through this, Jack," Olga said softly. "We have the truth on our side." Jack nodded, gazing out at the dark waters. "The silent waves have seen it all. They'll guide us." The fight against Victor was just beginning, but Jack knew they had the strength and resolve to see it through. The silent waves whispered their secrets, and Jack Hastings was ready to listen, ready to protect the waters he loved so dearly. Chapter 4, The Struggle. The morning sun broke over Grand Haven, casting a golden glow on the lake's surface. Jack and Olga stood by the docks, their resolve unshaken despite the looming threat of Victor and his men. The town's support had bolstered their spirits, but they knew the real battle lay ahead. Jack and Olga continued their investigation into Victor's operations, navigating through a web of secrecy and danger. They spent days poring over maps and documents, piecing together the extent of Victor's illegal activities. Their evidence was growing, but they needed more concrete proof to take down a man as powerful as Victor. One evening, as they were analyzing data in Mary's diner, Tom burst in, a look of alarm on his face. "Jack, Olga, you need to see this." They followed Tom to the edge of the lake, where a group of townsfolk had gathered. Floating near the shore were dead fish, their bodies bloated and lifeless. The sight sent a wave of anger and sadness through Jack. The lake was dying, and time was running out. "We need to act fast," Olga said, her voice tense. "This is getting worse." Jack nodded, his jaw set. "We need to get closer to Victor's operations, find undeniable evidence of his involvement." That night, Jack and Olga planned their next move. They decided to infiltrate one of Victor's main dumping sites, a perilous mission that would require stealth and courage. Tom insisted on joining them, his determination as strong as theirs. Under the cover of darkness, they set off in the silent waves, navigating through the lake's familiar yet now threatening waters. The journey was tense, each creak of the boat and rustle of the wind heightening their senses. Jack's mind was a whirlwind of focus and memories of past missions. As they neared the dumping site, they saw the faint lights of Victor's operation. Large containers were being offloaded from a ship, the contents dumped into the lake without a second thought. The scale of the operation was staggering, and Jack's anger burned even brighter. "We need to get closer," Olga whispered, her eyes fixed on the scene. Jack nodded, steering the boat silently towards a cluster of rocks that offered some cover. They watched and waited, documenting everything with a camera and taking water samples. Each minute felt like an hour, the weight of their mission pressing heavily on them. Suddenly, a shout broke the silence. They had been spotted. Jack's heart raced as a group of men, armed and hostile, approached their hiding spot. "Go! Now!" Jack hissed, starting the engine and steering the boat away as fast as he could. The chase was on. The men pursued them in a faster, more powerful boat. Jack navigated through the narrow passages of the lake, his experience and knowledge of the waters giving him an edge. Olga and Tom clung to the sides of the boat, their fear palpable but their determination unbroken. The chase was relentless, the sound of the pursuing boat's engine growing louder. Jack pushed the silent waves to its limits, skirting past rocks and through treacherous waters. Just when it seemed they might be caught, a dense fog rolled in, blanketing the lake and obscuring their path. Using the fog to their advantage, Jack maneuvered the boat into a hidden cove, cutting the engine and holding his breath. The pursuing boat roared past them, the men shouting in frustration as they lost their quarry in the thick mist. They waited in silence, the tension heavy in the air. After what felt like an eternity, the sound of the pursuing boat faded into the distance. Jack let out a slow breath, his muscles relaxing slightly. "We need to get back and analyze these samples," Olga said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Back in Grand Haven, they worked tirelessly through the night, analyzing the water samples and reviewing the footage they had captured. The evidence was damning, clearly showing Victor's illegal dumping and its devastating impact on the lake's ecosystem. As dawn broke, they compiled their findings into a comprehensive report. It was time to take their evidence to the authorities and the media. They knew Victor wouldn't go down without a fight, but they were ready. Jack, Olga, and Tom headed to the nearest environmental agency office, their report in hand. They presented their findings to the officials, their voices steady and resolute. The evidence was irrefutable, and the officials promised to take immediate action. News spread quickly, and soon, the media was all over the story. Reporters flocked to Grand Haven, eager to cover the scandal. Victor's operations were exposed, his powerful connections unable to shield him from the truth. The townsfolk rallied around Jack and Olga, their gratitude and support unwavering. But Victor wasn't done yet. One night, as Jack and Olga were reviewing their progress, they received an ominous message, a direct threat from Victor. The fight was far from over, and they knew they had to stay vigilant. The physical and mental toll of the battle weighed heavily on Jack. He often found himself thinking about his past, the war, and the sacrifices he had made. The struggle against Victor was different, yet the sense of duty and the need to protect something precious were the same. As the days went by, Jack and Olga continued their efforts, working closely with the authorities and the media. The pressure on Victor mounted, and the once powerful man found himself increasingly isolated. One evening, as Jack sat by the lake, Olga joined him. "We're making progress, Jack. The authorities are closing in on Victor." Jack nodded, gazing out at the water. "We can't let our guard down. He's dangerous, and he won't go down easily. We've come this far," Olga said, her voice filled with determination. "We'll see this through to the end." The struggle was far from over, but Jack knew they had the strength and resolve to continue. The silent waves whispered their secrets, and Jack Hastings was ready to listen, ready to protect the waters he loved so dearly. The fight against Victor was just beginning, but they were not alone. The community, the authorities, and the truth were on their side. Chapter 5, Discovery and Betrayal. The morning after Jack and Olga received Victor's threat, the atmosphere in Grand Haven was tense. The town had rallied around their cause, but the threat loomed large, casting a shadow over their efforts. Jack, Olga, and Tom knew they needed to act decisively to put an end to Victor's operations once and for all. In the days that followed, Jack and Olga intensified their investigation, gathering more evidence and building a stronger case. They knew Victor's operations extended beyond Lake Michigan and Lake Superior. The scale of his environmental crimes was vast, and they needed conclusive evidence to ensure he could never escape justice. One evening, as they reviewed their findings, Tom burst into the room, his face flushed with urgency. "Jack, Olga, you need to see this. I found something in Victor's records." Tom spread out a series of documents he had obtained, detailing Victor's financial transactions and operations. Among them was a ledger showing payments to a local official in Grand Haven. The betrayal stung deeply. Someone within their own community was helping Victor. Jack's jaw tightened as he examined the documents. This explains how Victor's been able to operate so freely. We need to find out who this official is and expose them. They worked late into the night, piecing together the information. By morning, they had identified the official, a prominent local businessman named Richard Collins. Jack and Olga decided to confront him, knowing the risk but understanding the necessity. The confrontation took place in Collins's office, a sleek, modern space that contrasted sharply with the rustic charm of Grand Haven. Jack and Olga entered with determination, their evidence in hand. "Richard," Jack began, his voice steady but edged with anger, "we know you've been working with Victor. We have the proof right here." Collins's face paled, but he quickly regained his composure. "I don't know what you're talking about, Jack. These accusations are absurd." Olga stepped forward, her voice cold and unwavering. "We have records of your transactions with Victor. You've been facilitating his illegal dumping, endangering our lake and community." Collins's facade cracked, a flicker of fear in his eyes. "You don't understand. Victor is dangerous. He threatened my family. I had no choice." "There's always a choice," Jack said, his voice hard. "You chose to betray your community for your own safety. Now, you need to help us stop him." Collins hesitated, then sighed, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "What do you need from me?" "Information," Olga said. "Everything you know about Victor's operations and his plans." Collins provided them with crucial details about Victor's next shipment and the location of his main dumping site. With this new information, Jack and Olga knew they had a chance to catch Victor in the act and secure irrefutable evidence. That night, they set out with a small group of trusted allies, including Tom. They approached Victor's main dumping site with caution, using the cover of darkness to their advantage. The site was heavily guarded, but Collins's information allowed them to avoid detection. As they neared the heart of the operation, they witnessed the scale of Victor's environmental destruction. Large containers of toxic waste were being dumped into the lake, polluting the waters and killing marine life. Jack's anger simmered, but he focused on the task at hand. They began documenting the operation, taking photos and videos. Suddenly, a shout rang out, they had been spotted. Chaos erupted as Victor's men rushed to intercept them. Jack, Olga, and Tom fought back, their determination unwavering despite the overwhelming odds. In the midst of the chaos, Victor appeared, his face twisted with rage. "You should have stayed out of this, Jack. Now you'll pay the price." Jack squared off with Victor, the two men locked in a fierce struggle. The fight was brutal, both men driven by their convictions. Victor's strength and ruthlessness clashed with Jack's resolve and experience. Meanwhile, Olga and Tom continued to fend off Victor's men, protecting their evidence at all costs. The battle raged on, the sounds of conflict echoing across the lake. As the confrontation reached its peak, Victor made a desperate move, betraying one of his own men to create a diversion. The betrayal backfired, leading to a violent confrontation among Victor's ranks. Seizing the opportunity, Jack overpowered Victor, securing him with the help of Tom. With Victor subdued, they quickly gathered the remaining evidence and retreated to their boats. The fight had been won, but at a great personal cost. Jack's body ached from the struggle, and the weight of the battle pressed heavily on him. As they sailed back to Grand Haven, the first light of dawn broke over the horizon. Jack, Olga, and Tom knew they had secured the evidence needed to bring Victor to justice. The authorities, armed with irrefutable proof, would act swiftly. Back in Grand Haven, the community welcomed them as heroes. The evidence was handed over to the authorities, and news of Victor's arrest spread quickly. The lake, though scarred, would begin to heal. Jack stood by the shore, looking out at the water. The fight had taken its toll, but the silent waves whispered of hope and resilience. With Victor's downfall, the lake could breathe again. Olga joined him, her presence a comforting reminder of their shared journey. "We did it, Jack. We stopped him." Jack nodded, a sense of peace settling over him. "The lake will recover. We all will." The struggle had been long and hard, but Jack knew they had done the right thing. The silent waves had seen it all, and Jack Hastings was ready to listen, ready to protect the waters he loved so dearly. The fight against Victor was over, but the fight to preserve the lake would continue. Chapter 6, Climactic Confrontation. The days following Victor's arrest were a blur of activity and emotion for Grand Haven. The community felt a mix of relief and anxiety, knowing that while Victor was in custody, his influence and connections still posed a threat. Jack and Olga knew their mission was not yet complete. They needed to ensure that the evidence against Victor was delivered safely to the authorities. One evening, as they reviewed their plans in Mary's diner, a storm began to brew over Lake Michigan. The sky darkened, and the wind howled, creating an eerie atmosphere. Jack sensed that something was off. The storm seemed to mirror the tension that still gripped their small town. "We need to move the evidence to the authorities now, before anything else can go wrong," Olga said, her voice steady but urgent. Jack nodded. "We'll take the silent waves and head to the state environmental office. The storm might actually help us. Victor's men won't expect us to move in this weather." Tom joined them, his determination evident. "I'm coming with you. We're in this together." They gathered the evidence and made their way to the docks. The storm had intensified, waves crashing against the shore and the wind whipping through their hair. Jack steered the silent waves out into the turbulent waters, his experience guiding them through the chaos. As they sailed, the storm grew fiercer. The sky was an inky black, illuminated only by flashes of lightning. The boat rocked violently, but Jack's steady hand kept them on course. Olga and Tom secured the evidence, making sure it was protected from the elements. Suddenly, through the sheets of rain, Jack spotted another boat approaching. It was moving fast, and Jack's heart sank as he recognized Victor's men. They had anticipated their move and were closing in. "Brace yourselves," Jack shouted over the roar of the storm. "We're not out of this yet." The pursuing boat drew closer, its powerful engine cutting through the waves. Jack maneuvered the silent waves with skill, trying to evade them, but the rough waters made it difficult. The men on the other boat shouted threats, their intentions clear. "They're gaining on us," Tom yelled, his voice tinged with fear. Jack's mind raced. They needed to outsmart Victor's men and use the storm to their advantage. "Hold on," he called, steering the boat toward a cluster of rocky outcrops. The jagged rocks were dangerous, but they offered a chance to lose their pursuers. Navigating through the rocks was treacherous. The boat scraped against the stones, and waves crashed over the sides, drenching them. But Jack's determination never wavered. He steered with precision, using the rocks to create a barrier between them and Victor's men. A sudden, violent wave lifted the silent waves and sent it crashing down, throwing Olga and Tom off balance. The pursuing boat struggled to follow, its larger size making it harder to navigate through the rocks. Jack seized the opportunity, pushing the boat to its limits. "We're almost there," Olga shouted, her voice barely audible over the storm. But Victor's men were relentless. As they neared the final stretch, the pursuing boat managed to catch up, pulling alongside them. One of the men leapt onto the silent waves, brandishing a weapon. Jack reacted instinctively, grappling with the intruder in a fierce struggle. The fight was brutal, both men drenched and slipping on the wet deck. Jack's strength and experience gave him an edge, and he managed to disarm the man, throwing him back into the water. But the distraction had cost them precious time. The storm reached its peak, lightning splitting the sky and thunder shaking the air. Jack pushed forward, every muscle straining as he fought to control the boat. Finally, through the pouring rain, they saw the lights of the state environmental office in the distance. "We're almost there," Olga cried, hope in her voice. With one last surge of effort, Jack steered the boat into the safety of the harbor. They were met by a group of officials, ready to receive the evidence. As they docked, the storm began to subside, the waves calming and the wind dying down. Jack, Olga, and Tom handed over the evidence, their relief palpable. The officials assured them that Victor's operations would be fully investigated and that justice would be served. As they stood on the dock, drenched and exhausted, Jack felt a profound sense of accomplishment. They had faced incredible odds and emerged victorious. The lake, battered by the storm, now seemed calm and serene, a symbol of their resilience and determination. Olga turned to Jack, a smile breaking through her exhaustion. "We did it, Jack. We really did it." Jack nodded, a sense of peace settling over him. "The lake will heal, and so will we. We've done our part to protect it." The fight against Victor had been long and hard, but they had won. The silent waves had seen their struggle, and now they whispered of hope and renewal. Jack Hastings was ready to listen, ready to protect the waters he loved so dearly. The climactic confrontation was over, but the fight to preserve the lake's beauty and integrity would continue. Chapter 7, Return to Grand Haven. The storm had passed, leaving Lake Michigan calm and reflective under the morning sun. Jack, Olga, and Tom had spent the night at the state environmental office, recounting their ordeal and ensuring the evidence was safely in the hands of the authorities. Their mission had been successful, and now it was time to return to Grand Haven. As they sailed back, the air was filled with a sense of quiet triumph. The boat cut smoothly through the water, a stark contrast to the chaotic night before. Jack stood at the helm, his eyes scanning the horizon. The lake, once threatened by Victor's greed, seemed to breathe easier, its waters clearer, its waves gentler. Olga approached him, her expression softening. "Jack, you've done something incredible here. You've protected this lake and its people." Jack nodded, a small smile touching his lips. "We did it together, Olga. This fight wasn't just mine." Tom, who had been resting in the cabin, joined them on deck. "What happens now, Jack? Do you think Victor's men will come after us?" Jack shook his head. "Victor's influence is waning. The authorities have what they need to dismantle his operations. We'll stay vigilant, but for now, I think we can finally breathe easy." As they approached the familiar shores of Grand Haven, a crowd had gathered at the docks. News of their successful mission had spread, and the townsfolk were eager to welcome their heroes home. Mary was at the forefront, her face beaming with pride and relief. When the silent waves docked, Jack was the first to step ashore. Mary enveloped him in a warm embrace. "I'm so proud of you, Jack. You've saved our home." Jack hugged her back, feeling the weight of the past weeks lift from his shoulders. "It wasn't just me, Mary. We all played a part." Olga and Tom were also met with cheers and gratitude. The community's support was overwhelming, a testament to the strength and unity that had helped them through the ordeal. Later that evening, the town gathered at the diner to celebrate. Laughter and conversation filled the air, a stark contrast to the tension and fear that had gripped them for so long. Jack sat at a table with Mary, Olga, and Tom, a sense of contentment settling over him. Mary poured them each a cup of coffee, her eyes sparkling. "To Jack, Olga, and Tom, our heroes." They raised their cups in a toast, the camaraderie and shared victory warming their spirits. As the evening wore on, the celebration continued, a joyous affirmation of their resilience and determination. Jack found a moment to slip away, needing some time to reflect. He walked to the edge of the lake, the quiet lapping of the water a soothing presence. The moon cast a silver path across the surface, and Jack felt a deep sense of peace. Olga joined him, her steps quiet. "Thinking about the journey?" Jack nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "We've come a long way. This lake, this town, they're worth fighting for." She smiled, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. "And we'll keep fighting for them, together." Jack turned to her, gratitude and respect in his eyes. "Thank you, Olga. For everything." They stood in companionable silence, the weight of their shared experiences binding them. The lake had been their battleground, but it had also been their sanctuary. It would continue to be a place of peace and renewal, a testament to their efforts. As they walked back to the diner, Jack felt a sense of closure. The fight against Victor had been won, but the commitment to protect and preserve their home would never end. He was a changed man, but he was also deeply connected to the life he had built in Grand Haven. The celebration wound down, and the townsfolk began to disperse, returning to their homes with renewed hope. Jack, Olga, and Tom stayed behind to help Mary clean up, the bonds of friendship and community stronger than ever. When the diner was finally quiet, Jack stood at the door, looking out over the tranquil lake. The silent waves whispered their secrets, and Jack Hastings was ready to listen. He knew that the fight to protect the waters would continue, but he also knew that they were not alone. Grand Haven had faced its darkest hours and emerged stronger, united in their love for their home. Jack felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that he had played a part in preserving the beauty and integrity of the lake. As he turned back to join his friends, Jack smiled. The future was uncertain, but with the strength and unity of the community, they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The silent waves had seen it all, and Jack Hastings was ready for whatever came next. Epilogue: The Legacy of the Silent Waves. Months had passed since the stormy night that marked the end of Victor's reign of environmental terror. Grand Haven had returned to its tranquil routine, but the town was forever changed by the events that has unfolded. The lake, once threatened by pollution and corruption, was now a symbol of resilience and renewal. Jack Hastings stood on the dock, looking out over Lake Michigan. The water sparkled under the morning sun, clear and vibrant. The decline in fish population had reversed, thanks to the efforts of the community and the strict regulations enforced by the authorities. Jack felt a deep sense of satisfaction knowing that their hard work had paid off. The town had come together to celebrate their victory and honor those who had fought to protect their home. The local diner, now a hub of activity and camaraderie, bore a plaque dedicated to Jack, Olga, and Tom, recognizing their bravery and dedication. As Jack walked through the town, he saw signs of renewal everywhere. New businesses had opened, the docks were bustling with activity, and the townsfolk carried a sense of pride and purpose. The lake had given them life, and they had given it their unwavering commitment in return. Olga had returned to Russia but kept in touch, updating Jack on her continued work in marine biology and environmental protection. Her efforts, inspired by their shared journey, had sparked changes in her homeland as well. Jack felt a connection to her that spanned continents, their bond forged in the crucible of their mission. Tom, inspired by his experiences, had taken on a more active role in the community. He organized educational programs about environmental conservation, teaching the younger generation about the importance of protecting their natural resources. Jack watched with pride as Tom grew into a leader, his youthful enthusiasm now tempered with wisdom and resolve. One day, as Jack prepared his boat for a morning of fishing, he was joined by Mary. She handed him a thermos of coffee and smiled. "Thought you could use this." Jack accepted it with a grateful nod. "Thanks, Mary. How's the diner?" "Busier than ever," she replied. "People love hearing the story of how we stood up to Victor. It's become part of our town's legacy." Jack sipped his coffee, savoring the warmth. "We did something important here, Mary. Something worth remembering." She nodded, her eyes reflecting the clear blue of the lake. "And we'll keep remembering it. Every day." As Jack set out on the lake, the familiar sounds of water lapping against the boat and the call of distant birds filled the air. He felt a profound sense of peace and fulfillment. The lake, with its silent waves, had given him purpose and connection. It had tested him, pushed him to his limits, and rewarded him with a community that was stronger and more united than ever. The aftermath of their confrontation with Victor had rippled beyond Grand Haven. News of their victory had inspired other communities to take a stand against environmental threats. Jack had received letters from people across the country, thanking him for his courage and sharing their own stories of resilience and determination. As he cast his line into the water, Jack thought about the future. He knew that challenges would always arise, but he also knew that they would face them together, with the strength and unity that had carried them through the darkest times. The silent waves whispered their secrets, and Jack Hastings was ready to listen. The legacy of the silent waves was one of hope, resilience, and unwavering commitment to protecting the natural world. Jack smiled as he felt a tug on his line, the promise of a new day and new beginnings. The lake, the town, and its people had been through a profound transformation. And as long as there were silent waves, there would be those who listened and fought to protect them. Jack knew that their story was just one of many, and that the legacy of the silent waves would continue to inspire and guide future generations. The end. Character backstories. Jack Hastings. Jack Hastings was born in a small town in Michigan, not far from the shores of Lake Michigan. His father was a fisherman, and his mother worked at the local diner. From a young age, Jack was drawn to the water, spending countless hours on his father's boat, learning the rhythms of the lake and the secrets of its depths. The lake was his playground, his classroom, and his sanctuary. When World War II broke out, Jack was just 18. He enlisted in the Navy, serving as a sailor on a destroyer in the Pacific. The war left its mark on him, the sights and sounds of battle etching themselves into his memory. He lost friends, faced death, and saw the darkest sides of humanity. But he also found camaraderie, a sense of purpose, and a determination to survive. After the war, Jack returned to Michigan, but he was a changed man. The lake called to him, offering a solace he couldn't find anywhere else. He built his own fishing boat, the Silent Waves, and carved out a solitary life on the water. The rhythms of fishing, the silence of the dawn, and the embrace of the lake helped him find a measure of peace. Despite his solitary nature, Jack formed close bonds with a few key people in Grand Haven. Mary, the owner of the local diner, became his confidant and anchor. Tom, a young fisherman eager to learn, looked up to Jack as a mentor. Together, they faced new challenges, uncovering environmental threats and fighting to protect the waters they loved. Jack's journey took him from the familiar shores of Lake Michigan to the rugged landscape of Lake Superior near Duluth, Minnesota. There, he met Olga, a marine biologist, and together they uncovered a network of corruption and environmental exploitation. Through it all, Jack's determination never wavered. He returned to Grand Haven a changed man, but with a renewed sense of purpose and a commitment to protect the waters he loved. Mary Anderson. Mary Anderson was a pillar of the Grand Haven community, known for her warm smile and unwavering support for her friends and neighbors. She was born and raised in Grand Haven, the daughter of a fisherman and a school teacher. Her childhood was filled with the sights and sounds of the lake, and she grew up with a deep appreciation for its beauty and its bounty. After finishing high school, Mary moved to Chicago to attend college, but the city never felt like home. She missed the lake, the small town community, and the simplicity of life in Grand Haven. After graduating with a degree in business, she returned to her hometown and took over the family diner. The diner became a gathering place for the community, a place where fishermen, locals, and tourists could share stories and find camaraderie. Mary had a knack for listening, for understanding people without the need for many words. It was this quality that drew Jack Hastings to her, forging a deep and unspoken bond between them. Mary was always there for Jack, offering him a listening ear and a steady presence. She supported his efforts to protect the lake, even when it meant long absences and dangerous missions. Her faith in Jack never wavered, and her strength and resilience became a source of inspiration for him. Tom Gallagher. Tom Gallagher was a young fisherman with a deep love for the natural world. He grew up in the Midwest, surrounded by the Great Lakes and the rich biodiversity they supported. From a young age, Tom was fascinated by the intricate web of life in and around the water. His curiosity and passion led him to pursue a career in environmental science, focusing on aquatic ecosystems. Tom's path crossed with Jack Hastings after the war, when they both returned to Grand Haven. Tom looked up to Jack as a mentor and eagerly absorbed his knowledge about the lake and its ecosystems. Despite his youth, Tom's dedication and enthusiasm made him a valuable partner in their investigations into the declining fish populations. Tom's expertise and dedication were instrumental in uncovering the threats to the lake. He worked tirelessly, often putting himself at risk to gather data and find solutions. His partnership with Jack was a crucial element in their fight to protect the waters they loved. Olga Ivanova. Olga Ivanova was born in a small coastal town in northern Russia, where the Barents Sea was both a lifeline and a mystery. Her father was a fisherman, and her mother a teacher, instilling in her a deep respect for the sea and its secrets. From a young age, Olga was drawn to the water, spending hours exploring the coastline and studying marine life. Olga pursued her passion for marine biology, earning degrees from prestigious universities and conducting research in some of the world's most challenging environments. Her work brought her to Lake Superior, where she studied the effects of climate change and pollution on the fragile ecosystem. It was here that Olga encountered the dark side of human impact on the environment. She uncovered evidence of illegal dumping and environmental sabotage, leading her to investigate further. Her research brought her into conflict with powerful figures, including Victor, a corrupt businessman operating in the region. Olga's determination and expertise made her a formidable ally in the fight to protect the environment. When Jack Hastings arrived in Duluth, they quickly formed a strong partnership, combining their skills and knowledge to uncover the truth and bring Victor to justice. Viktor Mikhailov. Viktor Mikhailov was a man shaped by the turbulent history of Russia. Born into a military family, he followed in his father's footsteps, joining the Soviet Navy and rising through the ranks. Victor's career was marked by ambition and ruthlessness, qualities that served him well in the often brutal world of military politics. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, Victor transitioned to the private sector, using his connections and knowledge to build a business empire. He was involved in various industries, including shipping, fishing, and industrial manufacturing. However, his pursuit of profit often came at the expense of the environment and local communities. Victor's operations near Duluth, Minnesota, on Lake Superior were a testament to his willingness to cut corners and exploit resources for personal gain. He engaged in illegal dumping and environmental sabotage, believing himself untouchable. His arrogance and sense of invincibility made him a formidable opponent. When Jack Hastings and Olga Ivanova began investigating his activities, Victor used every means at his disposal to thwart them. However, his underestimation of their determination and expertise ultimately led to his downfall. Victor's story is a cautionary tale of the destructive power of greed and the resilience of those who fight for what is right.